Have you thought this through?
No way will that work.
Are you sure? Is there any money in that?
You'll never make any money doing that. How are you going to pay the mortgage? Just get a job.
You're going to try to sell that? Why can't you be normal like everybody else? All right. Were your parents morons too?
The savvy entrepreneur to the rescue.
Congratulations. That really turned out well.
That's a really good job.
I'm going to admit it. I'm surprised.
You know, I wish I thought of that.
I never thought anyone would. How did you do that?
I'm so glad you're pursuing your dream.
I wish I had the courage to follow my dreams.
Hey there. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Savvy Entrepreneur. We are broadcasting from the greater Chicago, Milwaukee area. I'm your host, Doris Nagel, and I am a nutty entrepreneur myself. I love helping other entrepreneurs because I have started or been part of starting at least 9 different businesses and have also counseled lots of businesses, small businesses and startups over the past 30 years. And oh boy, I've not only seen mistakes, but I personally have made lots of mistakes. So my passion is to help others and help them not make the same mistakes and find other guests and resources to share tips and advice for entrepreneurs and small business people of all kinds. I welcome your comments, as always, your questions, suggestions. If there's a topic you'd like to hear about, you've got an issue or a challenge, or you want to be a guest, or maybe even just share a great resource, make sure to email me at dnagel, N-A-G-E-L, at lakes.radio.org. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest for today. Joining me by phone is Christina Fontenelle. She's going to share the story of how she built her consulting firm. I guess I would call it a consulting firm, but she'll explain once we get her on the phone, which she calls Fontenelle Arts. So hang on just a minute here, and we're going to get Christina on the phone.
Hi, Christina speaking.
Hi, Christina. Good morning. It's Doris Nagel with The Savvy Entrepreneur. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, super. Well, I haven't finished my introduction, so you can blush while I read through a little bit about you so our listeners can have a little background before we start our chat. Christina describes herself as a trilingual Afro-Latina psychotherapist, and she works and specializes in art and dance movement and therapy. She's a smart cookie. She attained her Master's of Art Therapy from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, which is known as one of the most influential programs in North America and internationally. I didn't know that, Christina. That's very cool.
Yeah.
She also graduated from something called the 92Y Harkness Dance Center's Alternative Route Dance Movement Therapy program in New York. She is the owner of Fontenelle Art, LLC, and it's a company that aims to serve communities by providing art and movement-based approaches to professional development, mental health awareness, and community cohesion. She's also the author of a book, which is very cool, and hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about that, which is called Aligning Your Inner Self Meditation Journal. So, Christina, with that introduction, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting corner of the world. You know, one of the best parts about the show, for me at least, and I hope for our listeners, is that they get to hear a little bit about all kinds of different businesses. And what you do is something probably a lot of people aren't really familiar with. Let's start out by talking just a little bit about what Fontenelle Art is. What is it that you do exactly, and what are some of the ways that you do it?
Yeah, so Fontenelle Art is a business that uses art and movement-based strategies from the therapeutic realm to go into different spaces where trauma is present or where there's miscommunication or anything that can have alignment with health and wellness. And so my company offers art therapy workshops, dance movement therapy workshops. I also do public speaking and talking about mental health awareness, not just within the city of Chicago, but just talking about in the world what's happening. I also do any fitness classes to help those who are looking to just be more in tune with their bodies. So I'm also in process of becoming a yoga teacher. I'm a Zumba teacher.
Very
so
cool.
really just trying to find alternative ways on which I can be an advocate for wellness. And I also do consulting. I work with an organization called Children's Home and Aid, in which it is a daycare for 5 and under, and they're struggling with a lot of children who have behavioral concerns. Biting, slapping, pinching, not being able to socialize, withdrawn, even as young as 5, experiencing depression and social anxiety. And so I go in and I do interventions after I do observations, and I talk with the teachers, I talk with the parents, and I come up with strategies on how we can help this child succeed.
Wow. Very interesting. Well, I'd love to dive into some of those because there's some pretty interesting points I think you just made. But first, okay. I'm curious how you decided to start this business. So there are lots of dance majors, I guess, and you could have probably taught just purely dance or maybe gone to dance with a company. How did you decide to form your own business and develop the concept behind it?
So my faith is very important to me. It's the core foundation of everything I do, and I cannot take any credit and say that I decided this, but it was something that was predestined for me. It started in college where I was actually in school to be a biochem. I was going to be a pediatrician.
Wow.
And just one day in class, I said, I know I can do this, but I want to do something more, something art related. And so I took the route of becoming, an art teacher, took some classes, transferred to another school with a better program. And then at that time, they were cutting all the art programs in Chicago. And so, I'm freaking out. My parents are freaking out because they didn't want me to go into a profession that would not lead me to any financial stability.
Right.
And I just remember one day going into my counselor's office and just crying and just saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I've been here for 2 years. I feel lost. And as I'm crying, she's asking me questions like, well, what do you like? What are you interested in? And I said, I love art and I'm interested in psychology. I like the brain and I want to help people. So she literally turned around and Googled art therapy. And that's where the Art Institute came up. And I started forming my way because in order to be admitted to the art therapy program, you have to have gotten your bachelor's in art therapy. But at that ISU, Illinois State University, doesn't offer that. And because no is not in my vocabulary, I formed my own major.
Well, you are meant to be an entrepreneur, that's for sure. If you don't take no for an answer.
I don't. So I figured out what classes I needed. So I was a studio arts major with a sequence in painting, and I double minored in psychology and art history. I went and I got an interview, and I remember telling them, very straightforward and saying, I know I don't meet the qualifications for your program, but I guarantee that if you give me an opportunity, I'll be the best art therapist that comes out of this program.
So
and they gave me a chance.
How did you end up combining dance with art therapy?
So while I was in my internship for art therapy, I had a supervisor who was a dance movement therapist. And I remember my first year, I was always interested in the body. We would talk about the art, the making, the painting, the creating. And I was like, but what about the body? We use our body to make the art. I couldn't see the difference between, you can't make art without moving and you can't move without making art. And when I had my first internship and I saw her lead a dance movement therapy group, it was at a center for traumatic brain injury. And she rocked my world. What I saw, I was never the same. I was like, you just communicated a whole 60 minutes without words with your clients. And from there, I had graduated from art therapy, and it was always, on my radar, and I was interested in going to Columbia College. But I ended up moving to Miami after I graduated from the Art Institute. And I was like, I'll just go to a dance movement therapy master's program there. But there was none in the state.
You're kidding.
And I was like, oh, so I'd have to move back to Chicago, but I had already become established. And so I just Googled dance movement therapist, and I found this woman named Susan Kleinman. And I met with her. She just gave me advice, and she told me about 90 Second Y, in which it was a summer alternative. So I would only go for 3 years, 3 weeks in June, and then I'd be able to come back. I was like, oh, that's great. I wouldn't have to move. I wouldn't have to relocate. It's not a full master's program. I would still be able to work. And later on, I discovered that she used to be the president of the American Dance Therapy Association. So that's where I say, like, it wasn't me. It was people that were placed in my life to guide me along what I was interested in. And I just graduated last year.
And so you just graduated. So I guess my question for you is have you ever actually been an employee working for another organization, or you just decided right out of the gate to start your own business?
So to be very transparent, I was in Miami and I lost about 4 jobs while I was there, because I would go in and I would see, I noticed a pattern that in South Florida, there's a lot of fraud. There's a lot of insurance fraud. So a lot of the therapy jobs I was getting, they wanted me to falsify information, add additional hours.
Oh my goodness, I never would have imagined that. That's horrible.
Yeah. Well, I was working with the elderly, and so I guess a lot of companies were getting away with it because they wouldn't know. They wouldn't know how much, insurance was taking out or the hours and billing. So they were taking advantage of this population, and I put my foot down and I said, no, I will not risk. It's unethical. Yeah, it was a big push and pull. And I got another job, and they were mistreating the youth who were struggling with addiction. These kids were living with roaches and holes in the wall, and they were getting verbally abused. And I put my foot down again, and I said, this is unacceptable. These kids are flying in from all over the nation, and you won't even let them call their parents to explain to them what's happening. That was another job, and a couple more after that. And my last 2 months in Miami, I was actually living in an apartment and surviving off of selling my art in the street.
So how did you end up moving back? You live now in Chicago, though, right?
Yeah. So I moved back in 2018. My parents live in Chicago, and my father struggles with dementia, and my mother is physically disabled. And so she had gotten ill while I was away, and it was just a lot of little things, like she wasn't taking her medication, they weren't eating properly. And I do have 2 siblings who live in the area, but they also have their lives and work. And so I decided to move back and just be an aid for them.
Wow,
because I was the one who was single without kids.
Christina, it sounds like you've had some trauma of your own to deal with. So yes. I suppose you can practice on yourself and help with it, with some of the healing with going through that through your own art and dance.
Yes. And I think that's why I'm such an advocate, because of how healing it is for me, that I want other people to experience and have a taste of what wellness can be on a small scale, in your own room, anywhere you can.
Well, it's interesting. Your story actually is not, I think, all that unusual for entrepreneurs that I've talked to. A lot of people end up as entrepreneurs because they just don't seem to fit anywhere else. And I would say that's really true. That's true of me too, Yeah. I worked in big corporations, and the money was great, and the paycheck and the benefits and all that, but I was absolutely miserable. And so when you don't fit and you keep trying to be a square peg in a round hole, at some point, and I know it's sometimes hard for friends and family to understand that.
Oh, absolutely.
So have you gotten some pushback? I certainly know I have in my process. People are like, well, why don't you just find a job, get a job, do your little thing, keep your mouth shut, don't make waves. And it's just hard for people to understand when you're just not wired up that way.
Yes. And so I agree that it is challenging, but it's about getting the right people around you. And at first, my family and my friends they were excited when I got a job at the Art Institute. And I was, when I came back, I accepted that position as the art therapist for the school. And I was like, oh, this is full circle. This is wonderful. This is where I got my degree. I'm able to pour back into the same students. And, but lo and behold, after, 3 months, it started coming up again. I kept seeing issues behind the scenes of management, how students are being treated, discrimination, and just not being willing to accommodate that students come first. And I left that position as well. And everyone was like, but why would you leave there? They had great benefits.
Right. And they tell you it's so risky, which it is, starting a business and you don't have a steady income and, how are you going to pay the bills? And so,
but also, how do you wake up and look at yourself in the mirror knowing that you're not happy?
There you go. There you go. And I think that's what drives a lot of us entrepreneurs. All right. So you're still really in the journey of trying to build your business. What would you say has been the hardest part so far about starting up your own business?
For me, the hardest part about starting my own business has been understanding the finances, understanding how to manage your business money versus your personal money. And so getting consulting through an accountant, understanding what's tax deductible, understanding how to set yourself up to have funds to be able to build up, because starting a business costs a lot of money. And so I think a misconception can be, oh, you just quit your job and you can go straight into it. No, you want a financial resource that can be pouring into your business until your business is able to take off on its own.
Yeah. So that might mean biting your tongue for a little while, biding your time with a day job while you start to put the pieces in place to build your business.
Yes, absolutely. And talking about the business and sharing about it and sharing your dreams and your goals, because my business has been able to thrive off of word of mouth. And I'm very grateful for that, for people to see and experience. And then they share with a colleague, and, now I'm speaking at Elgin Community College, and I'm going to Illinois State and doing workshops. And it's about allowing people to know what you're doing and how they can add to the puzzle piece.
Well, it's also, it sounds like, about stepping out of your comfort zone, because there's really nothing in your background that you described that I would think prepares you to go out and promote yourself as a speaker. Is that something you enjoy, or was that a little nerve-wracking at first, or it was you just felt like it was something you needed to share with people, and so even though you hadn't done a lot of that before, it was just something you had to do?
I believe that I have a lot of experience in speaking because it stems from the place of advocacy. So even when I was in college, I held a lot of leadership positions, started organizations, started clubs on, either mental health awareness, Latino wellness, or just the Black and Latino community, and just talking about the discrepancies that were happening on campus. But little did I know that all of those speaking engagements were preparing me to do it professionally and to be able to learn the language to do so. There's a lot of things that I'm doing right now that people would say I'm not qualified for. I've never taken a single dance class. I've never taken a professional dance class, but I am a dancer because I've been blessed to be in spaces where I have been around professional dancers and I've absorbed what they were bringing to the room.
Well, I would say once again, you're a very typical entrepreneur who looks at it and says not, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do that. I guess I better fold up shop and go home, or wait till I figure it all out. You were just basically saying, okay, I see this.
Right.
I will draw on whatever resources I can. Skills that I've developed in the past that I didn't know I could apply here, and people in my network. And if I don't have people in my network, I'm going to find those people. So
yes. And I do have to give credit to, as you mentioned, finding people, my business consultants. I go to a church called New Life Covenant Southeast, and one day I was there with my niece, and we were sitting next to this woman who had, neon colored nails, and I love neon colors. It's a part of my business brand. And so I complimented her, and, we exchanged numbers, and we had scheduled 1 week from that day to just call and to get to know each other and see how we can just build a friendship or relationship. And then that day that we had scheduled it, I was having problems at my job, in which the contract that I was under, it was a grant, and they were saying that they had run out of money. And so I would be terminated earlier than anticipated. And so I'm sharing with her, and I'm just like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to maintain, and I have a little bit of savings, but, I don't know what I'm going to do next. And so she's listening, and then she's like, Christina, do you realize that I'm a business consultant? I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, everything that you're describing, I have solutions. And so I hired her. And so I knew that I was an art therapist and I did dance movement therapy, but I was like, how do I provide this as a service? How do I market this? And she built my business. It's like as if I was making soup and I had all the ingredients, but I just didn't know how to get it into the container. I didn't know how to cut it. I didn't know how much carrots, how much celery, does the potato go first, all these things. And she just, because she's so skilled at it, she just guided me throughout the whole process, had me, build a website where they can click and add service and it's interactive. And so I had to give a lot of credit for her.
You do have a very nice website, by the way. I took a look at it before the show, but it's a very nice website.
Thank you.
So this sounds like, because you're still, it sounds like experimenting with a number of different ways that you might take your business. I wanted to ask what a typical project looks like, but it sounds like, I don't know if there is a typical one.
There isn't.
But, tell our listeners just a little bit about a couple of the projects that you found the most fun and rewarding.
Yeah, so I would say right now, being able to look back and realize that all the jobs that I was being let go of for advocating, for providing solutions, that is what made me realize I'm actually a business consultant. I'm a solutionist in the way of when I see mental health, I know strategies on how to increase that. So throughout the week, I do a lot of consulting for that organization, but throughout the evenings, I also do workshops in different community spaces. So like an example would be, I'm going to Illinois State University and they're having a TRIO day. And TRIO is a student support system and helping first generation students be able to make it to graduation. And so being able to be brought on board and to do a speaking engagement where I talk about, what is dance movement therapy? What is trauma? How does this look like in our body? How does it navigate the world we live in? And then giving them the real life experience of, okay, now we're going to go through an actual group session on getting people up and moving and breathing and dancing.
I think that's great. My daughter is a freshman or a sophomore rather now down at the University of Illinois at Champaign. And, I guess I never was aware until I had a kid who's in college, but the incidence of depression and anxiety
my goodness.
in colleges is
panic attacks.
It's just astounding. And
it's skyrocketing.
And frankly, the student complaints, according to my daughter, and this resonates with what I've heard from other people, is that the universities are overwhelmed and colleges. They don't. Most of them don't have enough resources to even be able to help the students. They don't.
And I've seen this more and more, which is why I have a passion to reach out to universities and colleges, because so many people are dropping out. So many people are struggling with alcoholism and addiction. They're struggling with just really that depression and social anxiety. And then if you bring in social media, now that's another layer that's affecting them, and they're not able to go to school. They're not able to sleep. They're having panic attacks, going to the hospital.
Yeah.
And when they are referred, the number one thing, even when I was in school, I was an academic peer advisor. The number one thing we're supposed to do is refer them to counseling. But if the wait for counseling is 3 to 4 weeks, they need something that day.
Right. I think my daughter joked. She said, unless you tell them you're going to jump off a bridge, that
they will not help you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I found that astounding.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's very disheartening to hear, but I know that changes have to be made to help these students to succeed.
So, all right. So you're going to Illinois State to do a workshop. Now, is that something that came about because the university is putting more resources into this sort of thing? Or did that come about some other way?
So again, it's with the TRIO program. And so because I was a part of TRIO, I had been going back and volunteering my time to speak and helping other artists find their way as I did on campus. And the director of the specific program, Shatoya Black, was just so blown away by what I was able to share and do in my life journey that she promised to bring me back under a contract. And so I have developed a relationship where I'll be coming back more frequently to have these talks about depression and art and depression and movement. And then from there, that's been helping me to be going to conferences to start speaking. I speak at a conference called Beyond Consequences, in which it's for schools who are interested in becoming trauma-informed. And it facilitated after the conversation of shootings in schools and the teachers and principals not feeling like they had enough resources about how do we help these students to prevent that, but also post the incident. And so I'm actually going to Montana in May. One of the women was a principal at Lane Deer, and she is struggling with helping her teachers be more informed about what does trauma look like in diverse backgrounds. And so she's flying me out there for a day of professional development where we're just going to talk about it. And
fantastic.
And so it's nationwide. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I got to ask you to put your thoughts here on hold for just a minute.
Sure.
We need to take a very quick break for station identification and a word from a few of our sponsors, but we'll be right back to chat some more with Christina. So hang on, folks. You're listening to Doris Nagel, and we are here today with Christina Fontenelle. Christina, I should have asked you before you started. You pronounce it Fontenelle, is that right?
Fontenelle, yes.
Fontenelle. So I apologize for mispronouncing it, but we are here with Christina, who runs a business called Fontenelle Art, and it involves art and dance therapy to help people with trauma and other kinds of, I guess, mental illness is maybe the way to put it. So you were talking before the break about the fact that most of your clients come from word of mouth. Talk a little bit more about how that's worked for you, because obviously finding clients, it's either finding money or finding clients are the two biggest things that most small business people are concerned about. So how have you made that approach to finding clients work for you?
So something that I find very interesting that I've been doing since I was in high school is that I've been collecting business cards since I was 14. And everywhere I went, 14. I just collected and collected. And I had no idea why, but I just had this strong
listening to the radio
impulse.
when I was 14, Christina. So
I was not your typical high schooler.
I guess not.
And so I just collected and collected in every journey in life I went through. And when I finally sat down and decided to go full time, I took out my enormous stack of business cards and I said, okay, this is where we start. Let's start in my network. Let's start with who I've already encountered and met and see if I can't help them directly. I'm sure that they know someone within their circle and so forth. And another thing I do is that I go to a networking event once a week. And I put myself in spaces where mental health is not talked about or it's not common. And I start the conversation there.
For example, what kind of situations is that?
Yeah, so I was asked to speak on a panel through an organization called Womanish, and the specific topic was selfish. How can women learn to preserve themselves on a day-to-day basis? And so I was brought on board as a mental health specialist. There was also a woman who owned a restaurant, a woman who was a psychic, and then another woman who was in the community, but also helping mothers be able to maintain on a day-to-day basis. So when I spoke at that panel, that opened up enormous opportunities because people didn't realize that you can use art and movement to talk about mental health. And that just brought so many more opportunities and opened up my circles. And so I try to speak in many spaces and places that I can.
It's not that easy, though, to become a speaker. It takes a lot of work, in my experience. I mean, you make it sound very easy, but you often have to do a lot of research on platforms that you might speak at and figure out who the organizer is and the right person to contact and, you know, come up with a pitch idea for them. In my experience, it takes a lot of work. And so you make it sound so easy, but I'm not sure that it is. So, so what's your secret?
I think my secret is that being a person who identifies as Afro-Latina, so being in both the Black and Latino community, speaking wasn't a choice. Speaking was a tactic of survival. It was how I advocated for myself. You know, it started with being in high school and advocating for what college I wanted to go to, being in college and advocating for more scholarships, advocating for my teachers to not discriminate against me, advocating for justice, advocating for equality. And so it was truly a gift, but it was honed in on real life experiences. And so now that I've brought it to the professional realm, I've been able to just be more aware of, yes, what is the organization? What is their mission? What is their vision? How can I make that in alignment with what I'm trying to say? So I think at this point, it's no longer a choice for me, but it's a demand that has been placed on my life. With the education, the platform that I've received, I have to speak up.
Well, you're certainly very articulate. I can say that from just speaking with you for a few minutes. So that helps a lot. And also the passion shines through when you talk. Yeah. So you've got a lot of different, you're absolutely welcome. People who know me know I just speak what I think. So I don't, I'm not a person who says, oh, you're so wonderful, you're so articulate, when I think you're really, I get myself in a lot of trouble sometimes, to be very honest with you, because I do say what I think. So you're doing a lot of different kinds of things, but I suspect at some point, and I bet you do too, that at some point you may want to put some more focus or be known as something more focused than maybe all the different things you do now.
Right. Yes.
So to that point, what does your ideal client look like?
Oh, this is perfect timing. I actually just got an email. I had been a part of this interview process, and it's called First Founders. And it is a fellowship program for young entrepreneurs within the 3 to 5 year range of starting their business. And that's actually my next step. I'm going to be paired with a coach that's going to help me just really hone in on what is my specialty and how can I develop that further. And so I'll be taking classes. I'll have a cohort. It's all virtual with a couple of days downtown Chicago. And I know that in the interview, the process, they were just like, well, what are you struggling with and what is your next step? And so for me to have received that yesterday, I know that I'm going further and further and understanding the business realm a lot more in order to succeed.
Well, congratulations. You know, a friend of mine says that's a sign that the universe is hugging you. When the paths, things seem to happen. There are things you try to do, and it just seems like every time you turn, it's difficult, it's hard, it's frustrating, and then you pivot one day and do something else, and you find that for whatever reason, things just, and I think doing the radio show was one for me. Just, the number of people who have reached out and the number of amazing people that I've been able to connect with. And so my friend calls that when he says the universe is hugging you, and it sounds like the universe is hugging you.
Yes. And regardless of, what people's backgrounds or their beliefs, whether it's God or a different higher power, really being able to listen to that voice inside of us, that intuition. Something that was just interesting. I was reading in the news this morning about, the coronavirus and the outbreak and how it has arrived to Chicago. And one of the schools that I was going to teach at, there was a lot of things that were going wrong. The dates in the email were wrong. I was supposed to get a background check, and the place ended up being closed, which prolonged the process. And something was telling me to just turn down this opportunity. Yeah. And I was like, a lot of things are going wrong, and this isn't usually how things go. So I sent them, a resignation. Nothing had started yet. That, grateful for the opportunity. This morning, that's the school that had one of the outbreaks of the coronavirus.
Wow, that is really crazy. So you just anticipated my next question, which is the clients that you might steer away from. And I don't know if you found this or not, but I certainly have in my past businesses, which is sometimes the clients you look for, that's a really important thing. Marketing people will say, well, you've got to find your persona, right? And pitch to the persona and focus on that. But I think sometimes finding clients that you don't want to focus on and being upfront about that is equally important, because your time is really your limiting factor. It's your most precious resource.
It is.
And so if you spend a lot of time with people who might be very nice and interesting and even interested in you at some level, but if you're spending a lot of time with people who are not good fits as clients, it's not a good return on the investment of your time. But I've also found, and I'm curious whether you have as well, that when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, it's really, really hard to say no to somebody, even if it's a project you don't really want to do, or you're not that excited about, or you don't get good vibes from, about something about the project. So have you experienced that, and how do you deal with that?
I have experienced that, and I'm grateful that God has been able to place specific people in my life to speak to those things. And I had a close friend who said, don't become an opportunist. Don't say yes to every opportunity because you think that it will advance you if it doesn't align with what your purpose is, and not letting the determining factor be finances. You saying yes to something because it would be a good return, but it's not what you want to do, or it's not convenient, or it requires a lot of effort that you're not able to focus in on in that moment. And so really being able to say, hey, I appreciate the interest. Let's stay connected. Let's see if in the future we can try to find something that works for both of us. The most important thing I want is to maintain relationships, because you never know when you may have to return to that bridge again. And so everything I do is a reflection of my business. Yeah. Everything I do, how long it takes me to reply, whether I return a phone call, whether I'm able to follow through, everything is a reflection of my business. And the last thing I need is for someone to have a bad experience. Yeah. So finding the line of being honest, straightforward, but yet professional at the same time.
So what are some of the unexpected roadblocks that you've come across as you've been trying to build your business?
I have developed a program for after school or during school within the Chicago public school system, in which it would be a 6 to 8 week program just addressing the social and emotional concerns. And the target population being students who are struggling with behavior, fighting, on the verge of dropping out, low attendance. The ones who are in detention are the ones that I wanted to work in and provide that alternative. And to my surprise, a lot of schools have turned away this program. Just not being able to admit that there is a crisis in Chicago with safety and mental health and discrimination, especially within the immigrant population. And so I think that has been very interesting to see.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I think it's not whether you'll hit roadblocks, it's how you deal with the inevitable roadblocks has been certainly been my experience.
Right.
Talk a little bit about what the future holds in your mind. What are the kinds of things you want to focus on going forward?
So the things that I would like to focus on going forward is really being present within the school district nationwide and eventually going international.
Wow.
It's been on my heart.
There's a lot of schools out there, Christina. That means, I think that means you and your lonesome cannot do it on your own, is what you're saying.
And And last week, I just onboarded my first employee.
Oh,
I have a marketing and outreach. Yeah, thank you. I have a new outreach and marketing coordinator. And my goal for Fontenelle Art is to now be able to provide contracts around the world for new art therapists and new dance movement therapists who are struggling to find employment. Because one thing that they don't tell you within the creative therapy world is that you will not be able to look for a job and just say dance movement therapy positions. It does not exist. Every job I've had, I've built it, I've created it, I've pitched it. I've said, you need me because I'm able to offer this. And there's so many people who are reaching out to me online and social media saying, hey, I'm thinking about going to school, but I heard that there's no job. Or I'm thinking about dropping out from my therapy program because I'm not sure that I'll be able to make income off of it. And so to be able to be a platform of if I can secure the contracts in different places, we need more of you. We need more therapists. We need more creatives. And so to be able to build the bridge to keep the field alive.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious about the process of hiring your first person. So talk a little bit more about how you decided you needed help in this specific area and how you went about deciding what kind of person you wanted to bring on. Because, a lot of us, when we're starting a business, there's a whole lot of things. We get to wear a whole lot of hats, right?
Yeah.
Out of all the different things you could have done, how did you decide that's what you needed, and how did you go about finding that kind of person?
So she found me, and she pursued me as far as a business. She was very adamant about, she's like, I need to be a part of your company. I'm not sure why. She had this very strong urge that she believed that she was sent by God to be an extra help. And when we first met about it, she was like, have you thought about expanding? And my first reaction was like, no, I got this. I can do this. I've been doing this on my own. And then literally that week right after, everything, I just got overwhelmed with so many emails, so many opportunities, but not having enough time or manpower to execute. I was, consulting during the day and staying up until 3 or 4 in the morning, just getting back to people and building proposals.
And you need time as a creative. I'll say this as a musician myself. You need time to be able to have those creative juices going. So if you're working and doing administrative stuff all day long, that part of you that is so creative and artistic,
it's not getting fed.
Yeah, you got to have time to feed that, because that's the root of who you are and what your business is about.
Exactly, and that's self-care, right?
Yeah, it is.
And that's being able to be mindful of that. And so I followed up with her shortly after, and I was just explaining to her, I was like, I think I will consider it. And I told her I am not at a point where I'm able to pay her. And so let's discuss how this would look like. And she is a volunteer employee. And, we did the non-disclosure. We did, the limitations of 5 to 10 hours. Here's how we're going to communicate. This is what I expect. I did a whole onboarding presentation with her about my mission, my goals, my future, how she plays a role. And she was just completely on board. And this is where we're at now. And I believe I can feel within my spirit that I'm going to have a lot more people coming my way wanting to contribute to the cause.
I have no doubt of that. So you've sketched out, I think, a pretty ambitious kind of a mission for your company, which is pretty clear you can't do all by yourself. So where do you see your business being ideally in 5 years? And what are some of the things you're going to have to do differently and change and put in place to get there?
In 5 years, I see having different headquarters in different places. So in California and New York and Florida, and having a team of art therapists and dance movement therapists, and doing a training that I've developed, and it's called SMART training, Submerging Movement and Art for Radically Trauma-Informed Transformation. And I see myself being able to hone in and teach, about 10, 15, 20 people what this presentation is, how does it relate to our field, and then having that flourish on its own and be its own entity for me to just come, fly in, check in, make sure everything's running smoothly. I know that demand is so great, and I know that it will be in alignment, that there are people out there waiting for me. They're waiting for this opportunity. They're waiting for someone to take the lead.
I'm sure they are. There are challenges, though, to taking a business from being basically a solopreneur, which is you're taking the first baby steps by bringing somebody else on and working with someone who's kind of your right hand. But there's a lot of things to think about, I'm sure, as you bring on people, which is how to hire them, how to train them and onboard them, how to make sure they share your vision. What kind of infrastructure do you think you'll need to have in place to manage all that?
You know, I think at this point I'm first being focused on what type of people I'm looking for and understanding what is it that I lack that maybe someone else can contribute. So coming from a place where it's not selfish, but just you're skilled in this, I don't have that much experience in this, or you can add to this, and then building it from there. And I'm also very grateful that my circle of friends are CEOs. My circle of friends have businesses. They have dance companies. They have contracts. So I've already been placed in a position where it's happening in their lives, and I'm witnessing from behind the scenes. You know, having a team of 20 people who travel all over Chicago to do these contracts, that's where that came to my fruition. And so I'm sure that when I get closer and closer, that God will continue to place people where I'm already trying to be. And so I'll be able to learn from those experiences.
Very, very inspirational. Christina, what advice would you give to others who are just starting on the path of maybe thinking about starting their own business, or maybe they've got a side hustle and they're wondering if they should quit their day job, or maybe they're in the business but are just struggling? Looking back, what advice would you give your younger self?
The advice that I would give my younger self is listen to who you are, listen to what catches your attention, what draws you in, what pushes you away. And I think this ties beautifully with my meditation journal called Aligning Your Inner Self.
Yeah,
it's a meditation
talk a little bit about that. Talk about that. How did that come about?
So the meditation journal came from a time when I was experiencing homelessness in Miami. And I was living, you know, at a friend's house who I met through church, but I didn't know her that well. And she just welcomed me into her family. And I needed something to keep me from falling into depression. And I just evaluated my life, like, what am I doing? Where do I want to go? Am I happy? Is this, you know, where I want to be? And so I got a vision of what needed to go inside the book. And I started practicing it myself to see if it would help me understand. And it did. It all worked. And I tried it with my clients at the detox I was working at, and people just started crying with the type of questions I was asking and how it was just what they needed on that day at that time. And once I got that confirmation, I was like, okay, it's time to publish it. I can speak to it from a firsthand experience. And so what I would say for people is to know, how does your mind, body, and spirit serve in a capacity in the world, but to yourself? What is your purpose in life? And what have you been exposed to show you who you are today?
Wow, very wise words of wisdom. So is your journal available? Can people go to Amazon and find it online?
Yes, they can find it on Amazon. They can also find it on my website, Fontenelle Art Calm, and it's called Aligning Your Inner Self. And it's a 28-day meditation journal that helps you reflect on, you know, your thoughts, your thinking. A lot of times we're saying, oh, how are you? Oh, I'm good. But in my journal, exactly. I break down. Yeah, that's superficial, but we're made of so many components. How are you mentally?
Right.
How are you physically?
And you know, if you start to tell people, they say, how are you? And you say, well, I'm having a really terrible day, and, you know, my dog is sick, and, you know, I don't feel good, and, you know, and people are like, yeah, thanks very much.
Now you're disclosing too much, right?
They're like, I gotta go.
I have my own stuff going on, right? And so where's a space where you can dive deep into that? And journaling can be very intimidating for people. they see a blank page and they don't know where to start. They don't know how to start. So it's a beautiful guide on asking simple questions to help you build your gratitude, look at your strengths, and develop self-care through self-love.
That is very, very cool. All right. So just to wrap up, I want to say thank you, Christina, for being on the show today and sharing your story and being so open and candid with some of the challenges and how you find inspiration. How should people reach you? What's the best way? Let's say we have listeners either on the show or the podcast version that are interested in learning more. Maybe they want you to come speak, or, they just need some advice. They want to learn more. What's the best way to reach you?
They can reach me through my website at fontenelleart.com. If you put in art and movement therapy, I will be one of the pages that comes up on the Google search. And from there, we can touch base. We'll do like a 30-minute phone call, and I'll be able to consult and build from there.
Okay. Well, once again, I want to say thank you so much for being on the show and being, just being present to share your story.
Thank you for allowing me to have a platform to share it.
Yeah, and we'll watch the progress of your business. I wish you all the luck in the world, and I have no doubt Fontenelle Arts is a business we're going to have to keep an eye on. So, once again, thanks a lot. We'll let you go, Christina. Enjoy your day.
Thank you. You as well.
All right, that's our show for this week. Thanks so much for listening, everybody, and thanks again to our guest today, Christina Fontenelle from Fontenelle Art. To listen to an on-demand recording podcast of today's show, along with other free information and resources for entrepreneurs, you can go to the Savvy Entrepreneur show page at lakesradio.org or to my consulting site, which is globalocityservices.com. Now, be sure to join us next Saturday when our guests will be Aaron Olson and Mehrdad Ajmani. They are the co-founders of a Madison, Wisconsin-based company called Novomoto, and they provide solar power to people who are off the grid in the People's Republic of Congo. A fascinating story, and they not only have a great story to tell and are very articulate, but they are making the lives of lots of people better, so you won't want to miss it. Until then, I'm Doris Nagel, wishing you happy entrepreneuring.